Welcome to Let's Talk with Dr. Robin. In this podcast, topics will be discussed that promote the daily management of life. While this information is meant to supplement your journey towards healthy emotional well-being, it is not intended to take the place of seeing a licensed mental health professional. I am Dr. Robin C. Wiley, a licensed clinical social worker with a private therapy practice in New Jersey. Thank you for joining today's conversation. Welcome, everybody. Hi out there. I am Dr. Robin Wiley, and happy to be here with you today. We are with you remote. I'm not in the studio today. I'm actually out of town. So because we want to continue in our consistency in bringing you the message and bringing you information weekly, you know, we're using the technology, right, Bryce?
Yes, indeedy. And that's so good. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm doing good. Doing good.
Yeah.
Look, I'll be like, I'm at an undisclosed location.
It's all good though.
So we're gonna dive right in. So today, the title of our episode, how to create the mindset you need. And the emphasis is on you. Just because, you know, I'm very big on individualized circumstances and individualized plans for ourselves, whatever that is. So I think whatever the information is that, you know, we share, and I think, you know, in this show, it is important for you to make it specific to you and to see where it applies to your circumstances, your life, because one intervention or one suggestion does not fit all. So what I want to talk about today is I'm going to bring you some information regarding suggestions to create a mindset. We're going to talk about what mindset is, where it comes from, all that kind of stuff. But the mindset that you want or that you feel you need to support your overall wellness. You know, we've been talking about wellness for the last, the whole time. Well, we're always talking about wellness, you know, whatever that means for us. And so notice I'm not saying, you know, how to create a positive mindset or how to create a, you know, and it was interesting when I thought about the title for this show and what I wanted to kind of relate to everybody, what information I wanted to disseminate. It was tough coming up with a title because I knew I wanted to talk about mindset, but positive mindset is of course helpful. And you know, and a lot of people will think like, oh, you know, I just need to have a positive mindset versus a negative mindset, which in theory, I think is certainly a great idea and a great concept. But we have to realize realistically, that's not always easy for us to access because there's always stuff that is happening external of us that impacts us internally. So because we can't control the external, sometimes it can be difficult and not always realistic to just say, oh, I'm just going to keep a positive mindset no matter what. You know, So I'm very realistic that, you know, we may have our days where we're like, hey, great, going, you know, I'm productive. I'm taking charge of the world, of my life. I'm going in here with vigor. And then there are other days where we're like, today is a day I feel much less productive. Or, you know, things seem to be hitting me a little difficult in a difficult way today. So let's first discuss mindset in general, you know, what it is, where it comes from. And, you know, I wanted to make sure that, you know, I don't miss anything. So you'll see me like I'm looking down at my notes because we got a much closer view of me today.
Right.
You know, hopefully, yeah, we got a much closer view of you today. I was like, hopefully, I know I see, but I feel like you're so far back. I feel like you need to be closer. Right. So we have like this equal here.
Yeah. I think
all my freckles are showing in the screen.
That's all good.
So where does mindset? So when we think about where does mindset come from, which we'll get to in a second, but what is mindset? So mindset is kind of like, it's like what we think about things, you know what I mean? Like how we approach situations, how we perceive, you know, what happens to us. It's our thoughts, our beliefs. It's a combination or a culmination of things. it's our perception or our view, which is ours, that, and that can certainly, our perception about things can become our truth. And what I mean by, and I stress saying our truth, which does not mean it is truth, doesn't mean it is reality. So the idea about mindset is, it defines for us how we receive something, how we experience it, whether we take it as a positive or whether we take it as, a negative, or we feel overwhelmed by it. It determines a lot of things. So mindset to me is key for our day-to-day journey, because it defines like how we experience life in general.
Right.
Mindset has the potential to pivot us forward. Everybody uses this word pivot. I love the word pivot, in terms of, because it's like a jumping, it's like a pushing, like a pushing forward. So mindset can determine, whether we pivot forward, or mindset can also hold us back. It can keep us from achieving, our greatness. It can cause us to not see ourselves in a positive light, or it can cause us to not see maybe our abilities and our strengths and that type of thing. Mindset also can determine how we feel, which tends to determine how we react or how we act and respond to things, and how we approach certain situations. And like I said a minute ago, like how we feel about ourselves and our abilities.
Let me ask you a question, Doctor, if I can. Does and it's funny too, because now, because I always say we're electronically right now, right? So I got to figure out when I can double Dutch in, I mean? Double,
yes.
I got to figure it's not so synchronous like
in, right.
But is mindset, like feelings feelings fluctuate. Does mindset fluctuate as well?
I think it can. And what I'm trying to get across to our audience today is the idea that we can create the mindset, because our mindset is there, whether we think, and sometimes we're not always aware of how our mindset is. And really what I'm talking about is like where our thoughts go. Like, do our thoughts tend to go to the positive, or do our thoughts tend to go to a more negative place? What could go wrong? That type of thing, which we'll do in a minute. But mindset it can fluctuate. I mean, our minds, that's why I said I didn't want to go with this whole like how to create a positive mindset, because that's not always accessible. It's not always realistic. I think in general, we want to have a mindset that goes towards the affirmative, that goes towards, okay, what I can do or what I do have, all things that are in more of a positive light. But the reality is that life happens, and life doesn't always give us everything that's good. Life sometimes throws some dirt on us, and so it's about being able to dust that off and be able to still make the moves you need to make, or see past certain situations. But so what can happen with mindset in particular is, and we'll talk about in a second where it comes from, but mindset, because it determines how we see situations. I always use this sort of, metaphor in a sense of, we look at situations through a filter. So if you think of mindset as like a filter, and our filter is covered by our experiences. So how I see things is not always based on how it's happening to me or how it is really. It's based on my filter. So if my filter is covered with things don't go well in the world, things are horrible, nothing ever goes right for me. You see how those thought patterns, whatever situation occurs, I'm going to see it that way. So it could be something as simple as, you're driving to work in the morning and somebody cuts you off. You don't get in a car accident, but you use that situation because you're like, oh, see, this is going to be a bad day because this person cut me off. So then you take that situation and you smear that situation over your entire day, making your day negative in a sense. So that's mindset, versus the person that may look at the same situation and say, yeah, a person cut me off. I guess they're in a hurry to get somewhere. And then you go back to listening to your music on your morning commute and keep it pushing. So that's the difference. And so oftentimes what tends to put us into this more emotional, more of a negative emotional state is how we view something. You know, it's not saying whether the situation is specifically good or bad, but our view of it and how we allow it to permeate throughout the other areas of our life,
right,
or with, and forget life, but just like throughout our day. You know what I
right,
mean? It's like waking up in the morning and having a bad morning. You know, you spill something, you know, your toast gets burnt, whatever the case may be, and then you take that and again smear it over the entire day and say, see, this day is going to be horrible. I knew it. I knew I was going to have a bad day. So it's our
right,
it's our mindset that dictates some of our emotional response. And mindset is about thoughts. It is. It consists of our thoughts, and we have patterns to our thinking. So yeah, but I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but you're right. You're absolutely right. Like it can fluctuate and it will. So that's why the work that we do on our mindset, trying to maintain a mindset that we need to be able to function, is key, and is something that we have to do more intentionally. Okay. All right.
got you,
But
got you.
that's a great,
Nah,
I think that's a great question. That is a great question.
yeah, thank you. No, I appreciate that.
So where does our mindset come from? So just saying a second ago, it comes from our experiences, life. Like life dictates, you know, how our mindset. So it could be related to how we grew up, how we were raised, different situations that happen in our life. You know, we know that it's safe to say the majority of people have experienced some type of traumatic event. And remember, trauma is not about the actual event; it's about how we experience something, and the impact that that has. We also know that a lot of times when we go through different types of traumatic events, people don't always get help. Kids don't always get help.
Right,
Depending on what generation you're in, people don't always talk about things, you know, and how it's impacted us and that type of stuff. So a lot of times we're trying to work through that stuff as adults.
right,
So somebody can be, you know, in their, you know, 30s or 40s trying to work through, you know, 20 years of stuff that they've experienced.
right,
So keeping in mind that our experiences, I always say they set imprints on us. So we have an experience. Let's say the experience happens in adolescence. You have an experience. We get past the experience in a sense of time. You know, time has passed. So there's years between you and when that incident happened. But the imprint of that experience we carry with us. And the response and the emotions and all that stuff we tend to carry with us, especially
right,
if we haven't necessarily processed it as much as we needed to.
right,
And so then that tends to dictate how we look at things. So if we've had a very negative experience, or there's a person in our life who should have been our protector, our guardian, and that person has not done that, then it taints how we view circumstances. It taints how we may view people and what we
right,
expect from people and that type of thing. So that all of that together establishes how we view the world. And sometimes how we, and often, not sometimes, but how we view ourselves within the world.
right,
So those imprints we carry with us, okay? And it's until we realize we don't need to have the emotional responses that we have to those imprints, or we don't need to use them, or they're not serving us. So our reactions to things. So like, you know, having the reaction to something that happens now based on something that happened in the past, because it reminds us of what happened in the past, or
right,
it reinforces the thoughts that we have about people or about society or about, you know, our how, where we are and how people feel about us, or that type of thing. Okay, I know I'm going real deep here. I know this is a,
oh no,
you know,
no,
this is
though.
a lot of layers.
Right. It's reflective though, you know what I mean? Because it's breaking down like how do you come to, you know, pretty much how I kind of, seeing it is like it breaks down how you come to make a decision pretty much, and whether that decision is whether you choose to view something in a positive manner or in a negative manner. And that's what it comes down to a little bit for me.
Right. Or if you see the ability to, like, you know, and like I said, like I think, you know, and yes, it is a positive and a negative. You know, if you want to generalize it, if you put it in like more of a black and white category, But the other thing would be the gray area for that is the ability to move through something, because we know that things are going to happen to us that we have no control over. Going to happen, and I say to us, but to us, around us, what have you. They're going to affect our loved ones, whatever. Things happen that just are not so pleasant. And so it's about our ability to persevere. It's about our ability to push through. And mindset has a lot to do with that, no matter what the situation is. So one of the things that, another section of this, moving on to our next kind of component of this, is how do you assess where your mindset is currently? And here's some questions. I have some questions just you can ask yourself. So it's kind of like, how do you approach life daily? Do you have, because there's different labels of mindset, So do you have an achiever mindset? Like I'm just, I'm going to constantly achieve. I'm going to do what I need to do. What have is life happening to you or for you?
Right.
And I know that can sound like, because a lot of times people will think life is happening to us. So like, I'm not in the driver's seat, but that's the question to ask yourself. Are you in the driver's seat? Are you the person, are you the person that is, managing your life? Or do you feel like just happening, just being thrown at you, just happening to you?
Right.
Do you see the potential in situations or look at the challenges first? And that kind of goes back to like, what you can learn from our mistakes. But when a situation comes before us, do we just look at like, oh, this is how it could go wrong? Or are you open to the possibility? Because that's a key thing too, that brings on a lot of worry for folks. Like we tend to do this anticipatory worry. We're anticipating the situation to go wrong. So it's the futuristic thinking, but it's about what could go wrong and then how am I going to handle that? But the key is we don't even know anything is going to go wrong. And so we're worried about something that hasn't happened yet, that hasn't even occurred. So just looking at like how you think about like current situations that you face, how do you think about them now? Like, how do you view those situations? Even if it's a good situation, do you just go right to what's going to be the challenge? So you're focused on what can go wrong before even experiencing the situation. Or do you see situations, no matter the difficulty, as fixable? Like whatever it is, I'm going to handle it. I'm going to handle the situation, or it can be handled. And sometimes we know that even no response sometimes is just as good a response. Yeah, it is a response. No response is a response.
Right.
And it's interesting because I wanted to kind of plug this book that I read a while back. There's this lady, she has a show too, Marie Forleo. And you can Google her, but she has this book called Everything is Figure-Outable. And it's based on a phrase that I believe her mother used to say when she was younger. And her idea is that basically anything that you're dealing with has some type of solution. It may not always be, at least one solution, but it may not always be the solution that we want or that we're comfortable with. But every situation is, she says, is figure-outable. I'm kind of saying like, and it is. You can figure it out. You can take some time, you think about it, you can do that. What happens though is sometimes our mindset about stuff, it causes us to just kind of like freeze because we are overwhelmed by the situation, or we feel like maybe there isn't a solution, or we're just scared. We're scared about what we have to do.
And let me ask you again, but see, you know what? It's like I'm almost afraid to ask because I feel like I'm asking the same question. But it's like, so mindset, so ebbs and flows, like for me, I can only speak for myself, right? So ebbs and flows to life, that happens to me. You know what I'm saying? Like that happens every day to me, right? So, and those emotions, they go, they kind of go on an ebb and flow level, right? But because my mindset is established that, I'm going to see the negatives as positives, or I'm going to see the challenges as opportunities. Does my mindset, I'm just trying to think, like, how, I guess, I guess, when you got me thinking, Dr. Robin, I'm trying to think of when did I develop that mindset? And then does mine change? Or does it stay the same? Those are the things I think about,
Right. And there may have been circumstances in your life that caused your mindset to shift. Like, I think, and I think that's what happens, depending on, because you got to think, we go through different developmental stages as we age, from infancy on up. And so sometimes at some point in our life, we realize that the mindset that we've had, whether we're calling it mindset or whatever, is not working for us. We're like, this mindset is not really gaining me. It's not gaining anything for me. It's not giving me anything. And so you might shift, you might make a choice, a conscious choice to change your mindset.
Okay.
And I think, but the thing is so mindset may not stay the same every single day. And what I mean by that is, that's what I'm saying, like with life circumstances happening, like there's stuff that just can occur in our life and happen to us that just, we're going to have emotional responses to that. And that's normal, whether it's a loss, whether it's just being overwhelmed by things, whatever. So the idea is that overall your mindset falls in a certain area that works for you. That's the idea. So like whether, I don't want to put a percentage on it, but it's just overall your mindset falls within this area, and whether it's in an area where you need, an area that promotes your well-being, your emotional wellness. And so that doesn't mean that every day you're going to wake up and you're going to be like, oh, it's, flowers and rainbows. No, but it means that even if it isn't, you're able to get yourself back to that point because your mindset in general falls into a certain category that is good for you.
Right. No, it makes sense. I get it now.
Because don't get me wrong, I know there are people that they're just like, I'm all about positivity, and usually, when people are saying that a lot, I always say like that's because we're trying to convince ourselves.
Right.
And I guess because some could say like, oh, you got to be optimistic, and I mean, hey, I like to say optimistic with a dose of reality.
You find a lot of stuff like that, and this is and by means, I'm in no way, shape, or form am I trying to bash anybody's thinking or reality or way of life, because again, I'm a believer and I love God, tremendously. You know what I'm saying? But you see a lot of that behavior in like the religious sector in church. You know what I'm saying? Where, how you doing? Oh, praise the Lord. Everything's, this and that, and but not really like. It's almost like it's like a facade they're trying to convince themselves. Like, I think sometimes when, it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to say, hey, I'm not having a good day, or I'm having a good day. Doesn't mean that you're negative. Doesn't mean that you don't have a positive.
Right.
It just means that you know what? Life is full of ebbs and flows. And, you're going with it. I know some people that say, oh, I have no fear. I have no fear. And I'm thinking to myself, if you have no fear, you're not living.
But I think what happens is, and don't get me wrong, I think, like faith can definitely be a foundation for some people's mindset.
Absolutely.
And I also think sometimes what happens is people are looking for something outside of themselves.
Yes.
To state how they're supposed to feel about things. So religion, and granted, for me, religion is one thing. Faith is a part of religion, but and I'm not gonna, because that is a whole other. And I don't, if I don't touch upon that, I will say I won't touch upon that, because I think that goes into some murky waters there, because people are very strong about their faith. And I think a lot of times what happens is that faith may be associated with whatever religious practices they have. And they may use that as their foundation for how they view the world, self, all of that.
Right.
What I'm saying is that, and I think it does feed into their mindset, but also too, what can happen with mindset though, is that the reality is that bad things happen regardless of what our faith is, regardless. And
mindset, anything, don't matter.
Yeah, anything can happen. So, and I think what may happen is that sometimes people are, they are maybe trying to convince themselves of some things. They're trying to, maybe talk it until they can walk it. You know what I mean? Maybe that's the way they're going with that. And so, I guess what I'm saying is that, we have to be mindful of how our mindset is, because that is dictating a lot of how we experience things, and how we just walk through life. So whatever it means, and that's why I said, like, what the mindset that you need, that people need individually.
Right.
So the other thing, going back to the questions, another question is looking at your patterns of thinking, and that's what I was saying earlier, like, is it optimistic, with a dose of realistic, because I think, we have to be, realistic about things. Optimism is great. But there's also the realities of life and of people and the world and that type of thing. And so sometimes, when we're going into things just only with a view of like, oh, I'm just going to be optimistic. I'm just going to think good thoughts. And that's great, and I'm all about manifestation and all that kind of stuff. But everybody doesn't always live up, to our expectations. Situations don't always live up to our expectations. So we don't want to set, and I don't want to say set the bar too high, but you don't want to have these unrealistic expectations of something, and then you're deflated or you feel, disappointed because whomever or whatever did not live up to your expectations.
Right.
So
it's not fair to, and it's not fair to them, by I think even placing those expectations. But you're absolutely right, though, and like I said, I just think that, it's what you're shedding light on is that, yes, even though you're optimistic, what I'm gathering is that even though you're optimistic and there's nothing wrong with that, but you still have your days too. And then what are you doing to get you through those days? Because that's the real recipe, and that's what it sounds like. To be honest, that's what it sounds like you're giving us, a recipe to how to still be optimistic.
A little bit. I'm trying to give, just because I think we have to look at these things, in the interest of self-reflection, and I would say self-preservation, because it is the idea of doing that kind of self-assessment of saying, where's my mindset now? Like, is my mindset holding me back? Is my mindset, allowing me to achieve what I need to achieve? And the reality that has to be worked on. You know what I mean? And worked on. Maybe, maybe your mindset right now is okay, or maybe your mindset was okay a few years ago, and now you feel like your mindset has changed because of whatever. But it's taking a look at that. And the idea that mindset can be changed if needed with effort. But it needs to, again, like most things, it needs to be intentional. We have to make an intentional effort. And so it could be needed, again, like I said, if your current mindset is you feel like, well, I'm not getting where I need to be, because, we can get caught up in this, I'm going to blame everybody else and I'm not going to see what I'm doing. So it's like, nothing's working for me. That's why I said, is life happening to you? Are you the driver in life? Because ultimately, whether you feel like we're in the driver's seat or not, we are in the driver's seat.
Right.
The decisions we make oftentimes based on whatever, tends to dictate some consequences, whether positive or negative, that we experience. So sometimes it can be tough to take some ownership of that, or to see the patterns, whether it's the patterns in our thinking, whether it's the patterns in our behavior, that sort of keep putting us in the same situations, whether it's relationships, whether it's whatever it is, job choices, or just in general life choices. And so taking a look at that, if I'm walking through life every day with the idea that everything goes wrong, so why bother? Then is that ever going to get me to a different place in life? And I feel like everyone at some point wants to be successful. People want to be successful no matter what that means. And that is a very subjective word, success.
It is very subjective. Very subjective.
Yeah, for some people, success is about finances, money, whatever. But for a lot of people, success is about happiness and peace and just feeling tranquil and just having a sense of, I'm here on this earth, I'm enjoying life, and I want people around me that support that. Or it's a combination of all of the above. So
no, you're right. It's different for different people. You know what I mean? Absolutely right.
So the idea that mindset can be changed is key here, because we don't want anybody to think, well, my mindset, oh, I do have kind of like a mindset of, you know, everything goes wrong, or a pessimistic mindset, or maybe a cynical mindset, or a mindset that's not one that's supporting my journey,
Right.
or where I want to be, because it's about like where you want to be versus are your behaviors and thoughts and all that stuff supporting that.
Right.
And so sometimes to change our mindset, it could be, you know, we may have to question some of our thoughts. We may have to challenge some of our current thoughts on things,
Sure.
processes.
Sure.
We may have to reframe situations. And what I mean by reframing is just looking at situations from a different perspective, you know, looking at it from all the different angles. So this is the idea of, okay, you know what, I'm looking at this situation as only a negative. You know, are there some opportunities here? Are there some things that I could do differently? Or is there, you know, something? So looking at those opportunities, what can be earned or learned from the situation? So like, what can I gain from this situation? You know, and that goes back to the benefits of making mistakes. You know, there are some benefits to that. You know, making mistakes helps us to learn. It helps us to grow.
Right.
Seeing opportunities as growth opportunities. And again, you know, somebody said, well, you know, that's kind of pie in the sky. But not really, because you're looking at realistically, we know things are going to happen. We know things are going to occur.
Right.
And even if the opportunity, or even if what we learn is, I'm not going to do this again. That's still growth. That's still
Absolutely.
growth.
Absolutely.
Right. It may encourage us to set some boundaries with ourselves, with others. So I think, you know, that's important. That's important.
Absolutely.
So I want to wrap up with, you know, changing our mindset. You know, keep in mind, this is not an instant achievement. Okay. You're not going to just say like, oh, you know, I'm changing my mindset and today it's changed. It is going to take, you know, some consistent effort, especially because, you know, there's always going to be things that are going to happen external of us, that are going to impact us. You know what I mean? It would be great if we could put this shield up where we're like, oh, everything that happens outside of me, I don't let that bother me. And I'm sure there are people out there that are like that, but you know, that's a whole other issue. Because, you know, when you care about people, or you care about situations that are going on in the world or whatever, of course, things impact us. You know, it evokes some emotion in us and that type of thing. But we know that there's going to be external circumstances. But also realizing that those circumstances, even though they may serve to challenge our mission, our mission to view life in a way that benefits us, we can still have that control of our own mindset and how we view things to then still be able to create a wellness for ourselves.
Right.
Okay. So I know that's a lot for today.
No, but you know what? But it's necessary though, because, and I'm gonna tell you what I take from it, and I like to think what I take from it, other people take from it too. So, but I just think that it is, you know, it kind of reminds me of a topic that, you know what I'm saying, that you had touched on a while ago, when it was like, you know, like I think it was called BU or something like that, and it's like what I'm gathering by everything that you're telling me right now is that, you know what, it's okay for me to be myself and to be a work in progress.
Right. Well, I think we were talking about the falling in love with yourself. I always look at that around the Valentine's Day time, but falling in love with yourself. Yeah.
Something like that. Right. But I guess the premise of me even, you know, bringing that up is saying that it's okay. You know, what you're giving me is that it's okay for me to just be myself. I don't have to put up a facade where, and I'm not saying that, I mean, because that could be judgmental, but if you're just Mr. Positive, optimistic, nothing ever bothers you, nothing ever, people then try to reach that plateau when it's like, hey, listen, you know what? It's okay to be a work in progress and towards changing your mindset. It's okay.
It's okay to have a day where you're like, I'm not feeling my best today. The idea is not to make that every day, and to realize that you have a mindset that supports. So it's like, what does your mindset support? Is your mindset supporting your journey to wellness, you know, all those various areas of wellness, you know, emotional wellness, physical, whatever, or is your mindset the mindset of, well, it's not going to work away, you know, is it more of a defeating mindset?
Right.
You know, and see what works for you. Like, what kind of mindset do you need? In what areas do you need to change that? And I'm just saying that's not like a one-time thing. And that's not something that just happens overnight. It is something we have to work on, because there are things that are going to challenge our mindset. There are things that are going to challenge, you know, even if we have a more, you know, a mindset more in a positive area, you know, we still have to be realistic about things. You know, there are days that are just going to be tough. And I feel like, you know, having that kind of balance, you know, the balance is always, I think, the struggle for most of us, you know, having that, whether it's, you know, life, work balance, whatever, but even having a balance of mindset, you know, to be realistic about things and about situations, because we still want to be able to respond accordingly when we need to.
Absolutely.
You know, you don't want to see a situation where you need to have a response. You're like, oh, it's just going to work out because I'm just positive and I'm just thinking positive about everything. And it's like, it may not just work out without you taking some action. So we don't want mindset either way to hold us back. We want it to kind of, you know, if we need to do something, we want to be able to do that, but we want to have a mindset that supports, you know, whatever action we need to take, that supports our ability to see it as something that is fixable, that we can actually fix. That we can do something, we can have some kind of response to it.
I tell you, I learn a lot about myself. That's why I enjoy doing this show. I probably never even told you that, because it could be selfish in nature, the comment I'm making. But I enjoy doing this show because I learn a lot about myself.
Well, thanks.
I learn a lot about myself.
I hope our audience is learning a lot about themselves. I hope, because if anything, you know, it's just about thinking. It's just about taking a moment to take some of the things that I'm talking about into consideration and to think about it and see, you know, how does it apply? Does it apply to you? You know, is it something you need to take another look at? You know, and it's not, like I said, it's not something that happens overnight. We know that, you know, as individuals, we're constantly evolving, and, you know, that is a journey in and of itself. And there's a lot of different layers to that.
Absolutely.
Okay? So I want to thank everyone. I want to thank everybody that's joining us today and that will watch the show. Make sure you like and subscribe, share this with individuals who may not know about Let's Talk with Dr. Robin. We are coming to you weekly, typically on Sundays. I think we've been pretty good with that. We're coming to you on Sundays.
Right.
And, you know, that's it for our show today. We'll see you again next week. Until next time, be well, be great, be you.